Hello and welcome to the Cyber Skills Collaboration session. My name's Holly Grace Williams and I'm the Managing Director at Sakama. Sakama is a cybersecurity consultancy. I've got some very special guests with me today and I'm going to go around the room and get them to introduce themselves first before I pose the first question. Amy, who on earth are you?
Hi, I'm Amy Stokes-Waters and I'm a Business Development Manager at Cognisys Group, which is a penetration testing company.
Dan, why are you here?
I'm a senior lecturer in cybersecurity and the course director for the MSc in cybersecurity at Lancaster University.
JJ, who are you and what do you do?
I'm a tier 2 SOC analyst at CyberClan.
And Richard, of course.
Thank you, Ollie. Hi, Richard. I'm a CTO at the National Cybersecurity Centre.
So this is the Cyber Skills Collaboration session. I'm going to talk a little bit about reducing the friction for people joining in the industry, how we can address the problem of lack of standardization around roles and all of those kinds of things. But let me pose the first question to the room. How do we reduce friction for people joining the industry? Amy, why don't you start with that one?
So I think when I kind of joined the industry, I didn't really understand any of the roles that they had. I didn't really get any kind of background into what kind of what roles were available really. So I've obviously in sales, so that's quite simple to get into, I guess. But I think when I talk to quite a lot of people on LinkedIn, and I've got loads of young people coming to me and saying they all want to be pen testers, and I think that's people just think that there's either pen testers or SOC analysts, and that's the only kind of roles that there are. So I think there probably needs to be a bit more marketing really around what kind of jobs there are available within the industry as well.
Oh, so you think it's like a marketing awareness issue around what is it that we do for a living?
Yeah, probably, because I think when I talk to my parents about what I do, if I say I work in cybersecurity, pretty sure they think that I just sit in a room and look at screens of green code all day, when that could not be further from the truth.
JJ, I know you spend a lot of time helping people get into the industry and on the mentoring side of things. Is that something that you hear from the people that you work with, that there's a bit of confusion around roles?
Yeah, so like Amy said, it's really common that people go, oh, I want to be a pen tester. It's like, well, do you know that these jobs are available? And it's not until you start to open up the kind of avenues to them, do they start to change their mind where they want to go. It's just giving them that kind of like element to research. If they don't have that, normally they don't. Normally they just see pen testing, and that's all they think cybersecurity is hacking. That's all they see it as. That's what they're going to, follow. That's the road they're going to try and take, and it's incredibly difficult to get into because it's very saturated now.
So Dan, you're a little bit earlier in the chain than a lot of us coming from the academic side. How do you think we can start looking at solving this problem of assisting people into understanding the roles that are available?
Well, there's a couple of things that I come across when I'm talking to students, particularly as they kind of move from the undergraduate into the postgraduate where we have our masters. And the first one is, there's definitely some weird media portrayals of what cybersecurity is, and that has a massive skewing of perceptions around cybersecurity. And then the other thing, when we get the students in the program, when we get them to think about the different roles, we're quite broad in terms of our approach, and we have a multidisciplinary program, so we cover everything from criminology all the way through to kind of penetration testing. So we have a broad range of skill sets and subjects that we cover. But the one thing that really seems to kind of help the students is to understand where the roles are. And so we have a lot of companies that think, okay, it's just kind of like the big consultancy companies or a classic cybersecurity company. But then when we go, well, actually, the Bank of England or banks want to massively hire cybersecurity roles, or just think about the diversity of organizations, critical national infrastructure that need cybersecurity roles. Then the diversity of roles starts to come out. So I think there's a lot of work to be done about thinking about where they can go and get their jobs, as well as what type of jobs there are as well. And then also just thinking about how we can improve the media portrayal of cybersecurity and different cybersecurity roles.
I get what you're saying there. A lot of people think it is only big organizations, banks and things like that care about cybersecurity. But I mean, we've got everything from startups to FTSE 250s, right?
Yeah, I think it's clear that we have to sort of push across. There are many routes in. I think we've all touched on the diversity of things that the industry is made up of, and pushing that across to people that there isn't just a defined set of roles. It's still quite a new industry compared to many other areas. So things are growing and changing all the time. So yeah, by all means, get a hook, pen testing, whatever, that could be it's an interesting hook, but then push out from there. And the fact that even now, there's different levels in pen testing, different levels in investigation, different levels over the place. So you can flip between the two. Just doing one thing at the beginning does not mean that's your career mapped out in front of you. There is that wide range of things you can do at any given part.
So the problem that we raised initially here is making sure that everybody understands that there's a range of roles. But does that mean that everybody agrees on what those roles are? So if I talk to one company about a security analyst role, will every other company describe that role in the same way?
I think it's the same across all of IT. So I used to work for a CRM development company, and they had developers, consultants, and analysts, and all three of them did a very, very similar job. I don't think there was any way to really differentiate between what the three of them were doing, and so I think it's probably a wider IT issue rather than a specific cybersecurity nomenclature issue, if I can use such a posh word.
So did you fall down on the no, we don't all agree on what the role definitions were there? Is that the answer?
I think so.
What do the rest of you think? Richard, do you think there's a good definition there, or is that also a problem?
So it's the wonderful thing about standards is that there are so many to choose from. So what one person calls a purple team or a red team, for example, there are nuances around the thing. And if understanding what different colored teams mean in the first place, you just Google cyber red team and you get bombarded with marketing and different versions of the same sort of stuff. So, but at the same time, you've got to start somewhere. So an organization might have their own policy, their own culture, and they use words in a certain way. But I think it is important that professionals like ourselves go out there and talk about this to other people and say, look, don't worry too much about the name of the title or the name of the role. Look about what it does. What's the outcome of that role? And what skills do you think you can bring to that role? And worry about those bits. The name, there's loads of funky names out there, like cybersecurity guru and all kinds of and ninjas and Jedi.
Evangelist.
And oh yeah, always a good one. But there's lots of different names out there. We can always pick a name. But I think focusing on those outcomes and the skills required to deliver that is probably a more useful way of trying to do it, and then try and map that back to whatever the job ad's saying.
So whose responsibility do you think that would be? I presume we're never going to get all businesses to come together and agree on a set list of roles. Do we think that falls to academia or to government? How do we solve that problem?
But don't give it to academia. We'll never get it done. We'll write a lot of papers about it. But, we do have the UK Cybersecurity Council that's supposed to be helping to develop our profession. And we've got high hopes there. But one of the things we've got to remember is pretty much when we started the MSc at Lancaster 10 years ago, we were the first one to call our program a cybersecurity program, right? So it's a very, very junior kind of discipline, if you like. And then you look at some of the other professions that are out there, doctors and lawyers, they're still defining the terms of what their roles are as well. They're constantly changing and expectations. And I think Richard's point around thinking about the actual skills and capabilities that we want in rather than the roles within the organization, I think is or the names of the roles in the organization, I think is probably a better way to look at it. And I think one of the big challenges we have really is this, the search optimization of getting the right keywords into the title so that the job ad can get in front of the people, right? And actually, are we really putting job adverts out there that are the right ones, or are we doing something just to make sure that we're going up the listings? And I think there's some real challenges here, but hopefully a good output from the UK Cybersecurity Council around the professionalization, and I think that's the key thing. How do we professionalize this industry is going to be vital moving forward.
So JJ, if you work in the mentoring side of things very often and helping people get roles, those kinds of things, do you see that job descriptions often fit the actual job itself, or do we think there's some problem around job descriptions maybe being unrealistic or having some requirements in there that are maybe not aligned with reality?
So I think this goes back to this kind of adage that the recruitment companies keep spinning about this skills gap. Now, I think the skills gap is self-imposed by the industry. And what I mean by that is job descriptions now act as a deterrent. People don't want to apply for jobs because they don't think they are quite up for that challenge. They come across as too challenging, especially for like level one kind of SOC roles. We see some really ridiculous requirements for level 1 stock roles. A lot of it is stuff that can be taught on the job. So I think quite a lot of it is people just don't want to apply for these roles because they don't think they're going to meet that kind of expectation. I think they need to really look at these job descriptions and dial back what they're looking for, because a lot of the junior stuff can be taught on the job, and I think it should be taught on the job. And I think apprenticeships are something that cybersecurity should be doing a lot more as well.
I'm seeing a lot of nods from the panel. Are we all agreeing there? Does anyone have a different viewpoint on that?
Well, I mean, I'm not a different one. I mean, from where I'm sitting, I get a lot of students coming to me and saying, what about this role? How does my course allow me to go for this role? And we do a lot of work with the students to get them to think about how, CV prep and industry placements and things. But it is an ever changing feast, right? And academia can only do so much. And I'm a real big fan of working with industry to kind of go, well, actually, this is where we stop in terms of the knowledge that we engender in the students. And then, this is where you need to take over, and working really hard to kind of blur that line.
Yeah, I just think it's also, it's not one silver bullet to fix all this. Pardon me. So, we can work with the academic community to try and mold courses and so on and so forth, potentially. We can also work with the people that are writing these job ads, the people that are recruiting and people that are sending these things out to try and tweak their language. So rather than just rage against it, go and talk to the teams. If you're in a company that's recruiting, or you're working with people in this area, say that give them good examples of where those things don't work. I'll go back to what I said before about some of these transferable skills as well. I mean, JJ made a great point. Yeah, training on the job and apprenticeships are a great way of learning sort of certain technical skills. The other stuff which can be transferred across, like understanding people's environments, talking to them, presenting, I think was mentioned earlier on as well. These are all great skills that are needed across the board. So just because you're not an uber Wireshark expert does not mean you can't do other elements of cybersecurity. It just means your skill set might need to move slowly across rather than go for big bang.
I would add to that and say that very often I see people raise this distinction between technical skills and professional skills and say, if you're not super techy, then you can have professional skills and they'll benefit you in the career. But I think it's important to draw that, like, even if you are super techy, even if you want to go into one of these knee-deep technical roles like pen tester or software developer or something like that, the professional skills, the ability to speak to people and the ability to convey issues is still just as important.
Yeah, I think that is really true. Like, we work with a lot of pen testers in our organization, but they've also got to have the ability to be able to communicate what they've found in that pen test to the customer. And the customer is not always someone who's super technical. Like, we work with a lot of small businesses, so they don't necessarily have like a super technical IT person there. They just know they need to get pen tested for compliance reasons or whatever it might be. But having the ability to convey like what the vulnerabilities and stuff that they've found in like business speak and kind of what risk it means in terms of from a business angle is really important to help the customer understand what it is that they need to do next.
I mean, one of the things I keep saying to the students that come through the course is, the IT Crowd TV series was not meant to be the model of how IT generally is supposed to be run, right? Gone are the days where it's a bunch of nerdy guys, he says, with a nerdy background, working in a basement. IT in general is so important to modern business that, professional skills, regardless of your just general IT role, has to be there. You have to be a professional, right? And regardless of the role, it's not about just sitting in front of a computer and fixing things anymore or writing code. You have to be able to engage with the rest of the business, because generally this technology is so important to the business that unless you can do that, unless you can have that professionalism within your role, regardless of the level, regardless of the focus, you're never going to really advance very far in terms of your career.
Question for the group then. If we're drawing the line here of technical skills are important and professional skills are important, I think people know how to develop technical skills, right? Read more books. How do you develop professional skills?
I think you just have to put yourself out there. So when I first started in sales, I'd never done a presentation to a customer before. So I've never had to do, and I've not had to do really that many presentations at uni, probably because I didn't turn up to classes. But But I think you've just got to have a go at it, I think. And I think you get feedback from people. You can practice internally with your team. If you practice giving presentations to your team, or you send videos of yourself presenting to your friends or whatever, and get feedback that way, I think is a pretty good way of developing.
I mean, at the university, we have within, like, for example, I teach the risk management course. So a big part of the assessment is basically a scenario presenting back to the board. And we often get industry speakers, or industry participants to be on that board and provide feedback to them. So we in academia can provide, that safe practice zone for some developing things like presentation skills, communication skills. And we have, and a lot of the other really good courses in the UK have that embedded as part of the educational process to ensure that there is an element of always continually developing professional skills. And I know for things like the NCSE certification for undergraduate and postgraduate courses, that is a requirement to get that certification for a program that you enable the students to practice those professional skills. And I think there's still more that we can do in academia, but I think that's a really good proving ground, sort of a safer proving ground than just being thrown in front of an actual real board and saying, right, present this report.
I think that's the thing. I mentioned there, Amy and Daniel, was about practicing. And you can practice, you haven't got to be in the cyber community to practice a lot of these skills. Talking with customers, understanding their needs, playing back what you think they want and need, those sort of things. You can do whatever you're doing, whether you're in the industry or not, whether you're a part of an academic community or part of a professional community. You can practice a lot of these sort of skills without actually being knee deep in cyber. So I think it's that openness that the skills are and should be transferred, and working out where you can get those skills and what you've done before. A lot of times we've seen applicants come through and say, I've never done this, talking to clients before, but they've worked cliche, they've worked in retail, and they talk to a customer, they find out what the customer wants, and they sell it to them. And that's albeit a light touch version of what a lot of the times you do when you talk to somebody about security. Why are you pen testing? What are you pen testing for? What are the outcomes for? Or another version of cyber. But these skills are out there. A lot of people have done them already. They just need to sort of maybe practice them a bit more, refine them, tweak them with a bit of technical background. But you can practice outside of cyber.
Jay, what about you? You're in a technical role. How do you balance developing those technical skills with the professional skills?
If you've got non-technical parents, explain your job to your parents.
Oh, that's a new one on me, but I like that. Yeah,
so if you've got so I had to explain how the proxy logon vulnerability worked to my mom because she read it online and she's like, oh, this is really big. So I had to explain to her, like, oh, this is what actually happened. So if you've got someone that's non-technical, that's your friend, try and just sit down with them and have an exercise. Just explain to them what you're doing for a living. And the best thing to do is try not to be condescending. Try to be professional, but try to relay your point.
So we've talked about roles within the industry and how we could probably do with some help standardizing those. We talked about developing technical skills. We've talked about developing professional skills. What about things like entrepreneurial skills? What about things other than just working for huge corporations? How can that help?
So I think we talk a lot about not just entrepreneurial, but this idea of intrapreneurial, which I not necessarily like the term, but it's idea that you don't have to be in a startup to be entrepreneurial, right? You can be in any organization and use those kind of tools and those techniques and that mindset to really push forward the industry, regardless, and your business, regardless of whether it's a startup or whether it's a big global conglomerate or something. So I think it's about encouraging people to try, fail, try again, fail again, come up with new ideas and just keep practicing that skill set of developing ideas and concepts, but not just developing them, but the ideas, seeing them through to completion. And that's one of the, I think, where there's a lot of misconception around entrepreneurial skills. It's about coming up with ideas. It's not. It's about coming up with a load of good ideas, down selecting a couple of the best ones and seeing them through to completion. And that's where the real hard work comes in. And you see a lot of people saying they're entrepreneurs, but all they do is just come up with ideas, but they never finish them. And so I think, we can encourage. It's not for everybody. I mean, I'm not saying everybody needs to be entrepreneurial, but I think those who have the passion for it, I think we should really encourage it, because that's going to help us in the industry by and large to kind of just progress in terms of the technologies, the tools, but as a community as well. And I think that's really important.
I just say that I mentioned it earlier that this industry is still relatively new. There's so much scope for new stuff to be created and understood, assuming nothing gets invented tomorrow. But as we all know, more things come out. JJ just mentioned the proxy loggers. I mean, these are different, new things happen all the time in cybersecurity, and because it's based around IT, it's based around humans interacting with technology. That's going to keep on evolving. So having that mindset of trying new things out, like Dan said, and playing with them and seeing what could happen is unbelievably important, because at the end of the day, the baddies, they're going to be doing the same stuff. They're constantly looking at new ways to make money, to nick stuff, to break stuff. And assuming we're all on the good team, we want to do that as well. How do we stop things being broken? How do we understand how things can work and be exploited? And that mentality needs to be really, really key to how we do the work. At least just thinking sometimes in a different way opens doors for everybody.
That sounds good. And that is our time for this session today. So I'm going to ask you all for one closing remark, going back to our original opening question. So how do we reduce friction for people joining the industry? Amy, how would you reduce friction?
I think educating people about the different roles that we've got available, so making sure that people understand that there's a diversity of roles and it isn't just pen testing or SOC analyst. So
for me, I think it's one of the first things is about creating this community, and the Cyber House Party is a big part of that, creating that cohesive community. And this is, for me, really one of the first times that we've seen like a community being built around cybersecurity. It's always been a little bit perhaps fragmented, and so initiatives like this, I think, are really important to create an open and welcoming community, so anybody who has an interest can engage with practitioners and find out more about it.
JJ, how do we help people into the industry?
Again, community. So utilize LinkedIn, engage with the community, interact with it, join groups, go to conferences, meet people. That's how you can open doors and avenues to different parts of your career.
Richard, you get the closing remarks for this session?
Okay, our community is awesome. These sort of events are brilliant. Embrace these sort of things. If you're professional, go out to them. If you're joining the industry, engage as much as you can. There's tons of resources out there. I'd like to sort of close with a proper realization that it's very rare that a solution is purely technical, and it needs a professional outlook to make it stick and work in any kind of environment. So blending those professional and technical skills together is how this industry moves forward and constantly evolves.
Great. Thanks to the panel, and thanks everybody for watching the Cyber Skills Collaboration session.